So moving on to chapter 19, the attainment of peace. Obviously, we're reading section 1 on healing and faith. You might recall that at the end of the last chapter, in the two worlds, we learned that as we turn inward, this is a radical turning inward towards our inner garden or our inner heaven, that as we do that, we encounter our false beliefs about ourselves and about life. So we need the Holy Spirit to guide us in this journey inward. And she assures us that these barriers are not solid rocks, but merely clouds of illusions. Nevertheless, in going through those clouds, our continual faith is needed for the journey. Question then becomes, what is faith? Faith in what? How does faith operate in our daily situations? And we will find that faith is given us. It's a gift. It's given us, and you have to utilize the faith that is given you. And so in this section, we'll learn a lot more about the power of faith, more than you ever thought possible. So welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonaca, your host. Our reader this morning is David S.
We said before that when a situation has been dedicated wholly to truth, peace is inevitable. Its attainment is the criterion by which the wholeness of the dedication can be safely assumed. Yet we also said that peace without faith will never be attained, for what is dedicated to truth as its only goal is brought to truth by faith. This faith encompasses everyone involved, for only thus the situation is perceived as meaningful and as a whole, and everyone must be involved in it, or else your faith is limited and your dedication incomplete.
Mm-hmm. This opening paragraph really sets the stage for everything that we're going to be reading about, and it would be amiss to just gloss slightly over the words and move on without really understanding the deeper meaning here. So they're reiterating this idea of an encounter. It's a situation where the miracle worker has dedicated this encounter with this person to truth. And the emphasis will be on dedicated it wholly to truth. So we don't have any competing agendas, my ego aspirations interfering with the truth, but dedicated wholly, completely to the truth. This is the miracle worker's function. And that the outcome, the peace that comes from it, is evidence that it was wholly dedicated. If peace does not come from that situation, it's an indication that the dedication was not entirely for truth, but that other agendas were operating, secondary and tertiary agendas. So we're talking about peace entering in to a relationship between the miracle worker and someone else. And this requires faith. Even to dedicate the situation in advance to truth requires faith. You have to be willing to trust that healing is possible. And this faith in itself at the higher end is unlimited, boundless faith, in the sense that it trusts the Holy Spirit that everyone involved will be encompassed in this healing. So, for example, often in family dynamics, there might be one person in the family for whom you have to work something out, but there are other people immediately surrounding it that have an influence as well. And so one's faith, we are invited to allow our faith to encompass everyone involved, because these are not separate and isolated relationships. These are relationships. All of us are in this together. Everyone must be involved, or else, if not, then your faith is limited and your dedication incomplete. I'm going to say one more thing about that. Don't beat yourself up if your faith is limited and your dedication is incomplete. We all start out that way. That's true. Everyone has worn those shoes. Incomplete dedication, limited faith. Just know that this is a journey, and we are shedding our limitations and shedding our, what would be the opposite of dedication, our other purposes, other agendas. We're shedding that and continue to shed that until faith becomes unlimited and dedication wholly to the truth comes naturally. Felicia, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. So faith leads to peace, which leads to truth. Okay, which one of those is trust?
The faith, I associate it more with faith, Felicia. It's prior to the event, prior to the encounter, we have faith and trust going into it. That doesn't mean that we get rid of our trust while we're encountering somebody or afterwards, but our part is to exercise faith and trust even before we have had an encounter. This is a part of what we in miracles of being right-minded, of going into a situation with your mind in the high place, with your trusting your internal direction to guide you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if you had to start just have faith alone, which eventually would lead to the trust, but the faith and the trust work together.
They do. They do.
Okay.
Because ultimately comes faith in what? Faith in the power of spirit to heal and guide. And more as you let go, as you know, Felicia, as you start to let go of your own control of these matters, you have to learn to trust in something.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I like your question. Thank you. Noel? You're muted.
You just anticipated me by saying faith in what? That in relation to the other, would it be fair to say faith in their openness, faith in their ability to understand, faith in their faith, things like that?
All of that, yes. An easy way to understand, I think it's an easy way, When I used to do remedial reading with people that were 8 years old, I had faith that they could learn to read, but they did not have faith that they could read.
Right.
And so I held the faith for them. I believed in them until they could believe in themselves.
Right.
That's what a miracle worker does, essentially. It believes in the
Well,
power of another person to heal.
in secular terms, this is called the Pygmalion effect.
Yes.
I may have mentioned this, but there's a famous study
Yeah.
about elementary school kids and how the teachers believed in them,
Right.
even though their records were terrible.
Right.
And of course, the kids responded as they should have.
So there's scientific evidence that believing in someone does influence the outcome. In miracles language, it's the purpose that you dedicate to is the overriding determiner of the outcome. Yeah. Susie?
I love that it says in the beginning, you know, that it's a practical course. And don't even it says somewhere, you know, don't even believe the words. Don't even take it from what I'm saying, you know, experience will show, well, at least for me, will show us, it says that this is all true. And that's why I love the workbook lessons, you know, just doing them over and over and over again. And then I have become wholly dedicated to knowing the truth. And then I see it for myself. I don't see it just because it tells me. I have to experience that healing is possible all from all of this. So I don't know, that just came to my mind. Like, you know, like I used to say, well, how do you get there? How do you get there? How do you get there? By experience, by experiencing it to be true. And the workbook lessons. Anyway, little plug for the workbook lessons as always.
Thank you, Susie. All right, we're going to go on.
Every situation properly perceived becomes an opportunity to heal the Son of God. And he is healed because you offered faith to him, giving him to the Holy Spirit, and releasing him from every demand your ego would make of him. Thus do you see him free. And in this vision does the Holy Spirit share. And since he shares it, he has given it. And so he heals through you. It is this joining him in a united purpose that makes this purpose real, because you make it whole. And this is healing. The body is healed because you came without it and joined the mind in which all healing rests. The body cannot heal because it cannot make itself sick. It needs no healing.
Okay, so let's focus on the first part here. Comes back to faith. If you really trust the Holy Spirit, put your faith in the Holy Spirit, then you understand that every situation is an opportunity for healing. So you could be kind of classic stuck in an elevator for hours with someone you've never met. Holy Spirit views that as an opportunity to heal. It doesn't really matter where you are or who the person is. What does matter is your frame of mind that you bring to that moment. Healing occurs because you offered faith to him, giving the person to the Holy Spirit. And here comes the real qualifier. A moment ago, Noelle commented on our attitude towards the other person, believing in them. Well, it's almost what we don't bring to the situation What we don't bring is demands our ego would make of the other person. And that really, this is a course in undoing the distractions of the ego. So to walk into an encounter free of having placed any demands on the other person is one of the chief criterias. That's how you set the individual free. And by you setting him free, the vision of the Holy Spirit rushes in. Because you no longer are imposing your own demands, your own agendas, your own limitations. So it opens your mind to receiving the gift of vision from the Holy Spirit. At that point, that's what everything that you are asked to do is just that. Make it possible for the vision of the Holy Spirit to come rushing in by not imposing any barriers. And that's how healing occurs. Sandra?
What I'm noticing about myself in my process is that I'm not fully integrated, and I have to really accept that and embrace that and forgive that, which is why usually I forgive myself first before I forgive anything else. And so I find that the darkness in me is still judging the darkness in others. And I mean, I just have to fess up to that and know that that darkness is the ego that still isn't, hasn't fully disintegrated in me. And forgive, again, just forgive myself and forgive everybody else because they're doing the same thing to me. I'm complete.
Mm-hmm. Yes, what you said does happen. Miracles, I find it very helpful to remember the one responsibility of a miracle worker. The first responsibility of a miracle worker is to accept the atonement for themselves, to accept the light of God as your truth of your being, as being your narrative, your identity. And with that, all darkness, all beliefs and internal darkness dissolve into meaningless narratives. To accept the light of God for yourself, and then in that illuminated state, we don't look for darkness in others. We shine our light and extend our light to others. So yes, the work comes back to a sense of your true self being filled with light. And that's the work of all of us here. That is the work of the Course of the Miracles, is finding the light within ourselves.
Hence, I'm determined to see.
Hence, yes.
Fess up to my crap, because if I don't fess up to it, it's just going to keep working. It's just going to keep working. It's darkness on me.
Thank you. Noelle?
First paragraph, the last phrase, every demand your ego would make of him. When I'm the quote helper, that often gets in my way. Why didn't he accept my words? Why didn't he appreciate my words? Why isn't he healed? Why doesn't he do this that I suggested? So letting go, just really listening for how I can be helpful, and then letting go of all my ego expected outcomes is what I'm working on. Demanding of myself.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. David, you had your hand up.
I think Sandra used the term disintegrate the ego. And it just jumped up and I loved it. To think of the term disintegrate the ego, not destroy, because we can never destroy it, but we can disintegrate it by removing it and separating the ego from the higher self and from the Holy Spirit and from our mind. And I just loved that. It was such a perfect use of the word. Thank you.
I get that now. Thank you for pointing that out. I missed that, but I see it now that you've underscored it. Thank you. Felicia?
Yeah, I have this strong need to share this. Now, this did not come from me. This came from a miracle worker. I do not want to take any credit for it, but we were talking kind of about how to, when you look at another person, and how you perceive them. If I look at another person through my body's eyes, I'm going to see judgment. I cannot remove the darkness. The Holy Spirit can. What I have to do is let the Holy Spirit in and allow myself to look with the Holy Spirit's eyes. I got to get out of the way. And that just came up for me. And of course, I don't want to take any credit for it, but when it was said to me, it makes total sense, because I struggle all day long with it. But well, wait a minute. But so I just felt the need that I needed to share that. And thanks for letting me.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. Very good. Yes, it's the vision of the Holy Spirit that transforms our ability to see. All right, we'll go on.
The body cannot heal because it cannot make itself sick. It needs no healing. Its health or sickness depends entirely on how the mind perceives it and the purpose that the mind would use it for. It is obvious that a segment of the mind can see itself as separated from the universal purpose. When this occurs, the body becomes its weapon, used against this purpose to demonstrate the fact that separation has occurred. The body thus becomes the instrument of illusion, acting accordingly, seeing what is not there, hearing what truth has never said, and behaving insanely, being imprisoned by insanity.
So this might be difficult for some to understand because of the prevalence of level confusion, which has to do with has to do with the levels of the physical body, the higher mind, and the whole and the eternal spirit, and attributing properties from one level to another. The mistaken effort, the confusion that believes properties that belong in one domain also belong in the other. And so once, and we don't have time in this context to review all of that from the beginning, but suffice it to say, level clarity brings you around to the understanding that the body is not a healer, because the body doesn't make itself sick. The body doesn't have two purposes. It doesn't have demands that it places upon another person. These are driven by the mind. The mind certainly can entertain two purposes, and that's what we call sickness, attempting to serve the light and at the same time keep agendas that are dark alive in our life, splitting ourselves and thus making ourselves sick. So in miracles, the body is perceived as a useful device that fulfills the purpose that the mind would use it for. And if the mind aligns itself with the Holy Spirit's vision, sees itself as being here to help and to heal, then the body will be carried along in that mission to help and to heal. And that's a good thing. But if the mind is split between two opposite agendas, then the mind will assign the body an unholy purpose, even to the extent that the body becomes a weapon. Felicia said, if I use my physical eyes and look at another person, I will find fault. I will find basis for judgment. That's using the body as a weapon and saying, I'm looking for what I don't like about that other person. And so the body is subordinated to the purpose of the mind that the mind would use it for. And for this reason, this entire program centers around healing the mind, in the understanding that once the mind is healed, it will use the body for holy purposes, not use it as a weapon. Sandra?
So would you say this is a true statement that it's the misunderstanding of the mind that makes the body sick?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and when we say sick, so I don't want to go into all the long list of self-destructive behaviors that people on our world engage in. But clearly, the body did not initiate those behaviors. The mind, it was conflict within the mind that was the source, and then the mind instructed the body to engage in self-destructive behaviors. So when we say sick, we mean using the body for an unholy purpose, using it as a weapon. And it can be even as innocent as looking at another person and say, oh, and then following up with some judgment about their unlovability because of what the eyes see. It's very subtle. It can arise in very subtle ways. I found this is one of the more one of the teachings that people struggle with, is this level confusion. And it will tell you right in the principles that all sickness comes from confusing the levels. It tells you right here, the body cannot make itself sick. Why is it sick? Because the mind has assigned it a purpose which is in itself unhealthy, unholy. All right, so that's a big topic. If it didn't all land right now, that's okay. We will look at it from other angles as well.
Do not overlook our earlier statement that faithlessness leads straight to illusions. For faithlessness is the perception of a brother as a body, and the body cannot be used for purposes of union. If then you see your brother as a body, you have established a condition in which uniting with him becomes impossible. Your faithlessness to him has separated you from him and kept you both apart from being healed. Your faithlessness has thus opposed the Holy Spirit's purpose and brought illusions centered on the body to stand between you. And the body will seem to be sick, for you have made of it an enemy of healing and the opposite of truth.
So that last line we need to come back to in just a moment, but let's set the stage. In Holy Spirit's teachings, your mind can unite with the mind, the higher mind of anyone. In fact, your mind can unite with the higher mind of everyone. It's a union of all minds around a common purpose, a common identity, union with all minds. But now imagine trying to unite your body with all the bodies in this world. It's kind of a ridiculous notion. I mean, how would you do that? Bodies cannot unite. Bodies are inherently entities unto themselves. That is to say, separate entities. You have yours, I have mine, they have theirs. And they're all have their own uniqueness. So they have different properties. As what we're illustrating here is the body has different properties than the mind. And it's the confusion of those properties is what we call level confusion. So now let's look what happens when confusion in the mind is then projected onto the body. Your faithlessness has opposed the Holy Spirit's purpose. You're withdrawing trust and faith from the Holy Spirit. And the vacuum will then be filled by illusions, which are centered on the body, then stand between your self-consciousness and your awareness of the other person. Instead of faith and trust and light and healing, faithlessness will create a vacuum that will be filled by illusions. And then the body will seem to be sick because it will serve an unholy purpose, for you've made an enemy of healing and the opposite of truth. We're not saying that when this happens, you know all this, you're conscious of all this, but when we are saying that when you stand in judgment of another person, go back to Felicia's comment. I'm just sitting there looking at somebody with the eyes of the flesh, and I'm evaluating their body, and I see the things that I don't like about that. What you're doing is that it means you're using the power of your mind to be a critic. You're weaponizing the power of your mind. That makes it an enemy of healing. And that's what a sick mind will do, is become an enemy of healing. We have, by the way, don't beat yourself up. Everyone has done this. The reason why we're here to learn about this is because it's not abstract. It's frequently done. We didn't know any better. We did these things without conscious awareness. What we are saying is that you can change your mind and you can rise above these faithless behaviors and instead choose to allow the vision of the Holy Spirit to stand between you and the other person. David?
It cannot be difficult to realize that faith must be the opposite of faithlessness. Yet the difference in how they operate is less apparent, though it follows directly from the fundamental difference in what they are. Faithlessness would always limit and attack. Faith would remove all limitations and make whole. Faithlessness would destroy and separate. Faith would unite and heal. Faithlessness would interpose illusions between the Son of God and his Creator. Faith would remove all obstacles that seem to rise between them. Faithlessness is wholly dedicated to illusions, faith wholly to truth. Partial dedication is impossible. Truth is the absence of illusion, illusion, the absence of truth. Both cannot be together, nor perceived in the same place. To dedicate yourself to both is to set up a goal forever impossible to attain. For part of it is sought through the body, thought of as a means for seeking out reality through attack. The other part would heal, and therefore calls upon the mind and not the body.
Mhm. So we just want to affirm a universal principle found in the Course of Miracles about teaching through contrasting opposites. This is throughout the Course of Miracles. So if we're going to look at a topic such as faith, we're also going to contrast it with what it's not, faithlessness. And in this paragraph, you see that teaching mechanism applied. Faithlessness would do this, faith would do that, contrasting the two. And we will then use that same technique for love, for peace, for healing, again and again and again, so that you learn what these things are not and can make a distinction. Here's the key. The Holy Spirit, what is she really here to do? She's really here to help you to distinguish before yourself between these opposites. So while your little mind may have been confused about love and fear and not see the two clearly, have a lot of overlap, the Holy Spirit would help you learn to distinguish what love is not. And if it's not love, then it must be fear. She teaches you to distinguish those two. And so here, this is an example that applied to faithlessness. And we will see that a lot more. The other thing it has to do here is, one more. The third rail of that is the error of trying to combine opposites. This is really the message you need to hear, not the one I just said, we've said before. The ego wants you to take two opposites like faith and faithlessness and integrate them together. This is to go back to that term that Sandra used and David pointed out of disintegrating the ego is to distinguish them apart, but the ego would have you smash love and fear together, have you smash healing and sickness together and make them all confused in your mind so that you have a mishmash of ideas, and would have you believe in that forever. What we learn in the Course is that which comes from the Creator is pure. It is not a mishmash of love and hate, of light and darkness, but it is pure love, pure light. Therefore, partial dedication, which is a mishmash of dedication and disloyalty, smashing them together. So I'm only going to be dedicated when it's convenient for me. Partial dedication is impossible. So this is just a way of recognizing how confusion can come about, which is to fail to distinguish between these opposites. So we have a bunch of hands here. Let's take one from Susie.
Yeah, the ego is a master at trying to talk me into that partial dedication is possible. Um, you know, today's lesson really is, I was talking to David about it because it's, it could be the ego says, oh, beyond all else, if I get this, I'll be okay. You know, just this one little thing. And, even if it's a quote unquote body sickness, well, if I recover from this disease, I'll be okay. But I have come to understand that that's not true, because it'll just be something else the ego wants, and that lesson that's coming up beyond all else, I want to see differently and I want the peace of God. My ego doesn't want to hear that. So it keeps trying to interfere and, give me the thoughts of things that I used to do or still do that I are identified with being a body. So this is where my mind paying attention to my thoughts become crucial, because like you said, it's not, I don't have to beat myself up for it at all. At all. I just have to say, Holy Spirit, there I go again, thinking about whatever. Please help remove these thoughts, because they're blocking love's awareness. And that's it, really. It's just that simple, right? So I just, it's all so important. But as I said before, like, I just have to keep studying and practicing and practicing and practicing and be vigilant and not beat myself up, but recognize and be honest with myself. Oh, there I go again. It's body identification, but it's not ultimately going to bring me peace. So for me, it's the honesty of witnessing what's going on in my mind that will ultimately help me heal.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and I wanted to add a great remedy is don't forget to laugh.
Right.
When you see, because it's true of everybody. The reason why we're all here is because we haven't mastered these things. When your ego arises and for a period of time, it grabs your attention and hauls your thoughts away, and then you recognize it, laugh at it. And that is, trust me, that really feels good, to laugh at the ego and then let it go and move on. Sandra?
Yeah, I loved what you said, Susie. And for me, these I like to think of these as universal truths. And I've also studied Zen Buddhism, and the sign yin and yang, and my understanding of Zen Buddhism is that nothing is completely yin and nothing is completely yang. There's always a little bit of yin in the yang, and there's always a little bit of yang in the yin. So therefore, I can't judge it. I just can't judge it. I just have to know that it's part of the whole picture, and that because of this yin and yang, and that there's nothing that's completely light. There's always a little bit of darkness in there, and nothing that's completely dark. There's always a little bit of light in there, which is the spirit of evolution and hope that things can change. And part of one of the um what's the word I'm thinking of, a description of life is change. um and it can't be threatened, because change is real. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. We're always going to be moving. Everything's changing, and we judge the change, and we can't do that. We just need to and that, because of that, we can't decide either, because nothing is completely light and nothing is completely dark. So now we have to call for guidance, because we can't make those decisions, or I can't make those decisions. I have to ask for guidance. And they're all gifts. The darkness, to me, when I recognize the darkness in myself, it's a gift, because now I know what to turn over to the Holy Spirit and where to ask for the guidance. I'm complete.
We'll go on.
The inevitable compromise is the belief that the body must be healed and not the mind. For this divided goal has given both an equal reality, which could be possible only if the mind is limited to the body and divided into little parts of seeming wholeness, but without connection. This will not harm the body, but it will keep the delusional thought system in the mind. Here, then, is healing needed, and it is here that healing is. For God gave healing not apart from sickness, nor established remedy where sickness cannot be. They are together, and when they are seen together, all attempts to keep both truth and illusion in the mind, where both must be, are recognized as dedication to illusion, and given up when brought to truth, and seen as totally irreconcilable with truth in any respect or in any way.
Mhm. I think that was very clear. So let's go on to the next paragraph.
Truth and illusion have no connection. This will remain forever true, however much you seek to connect them. But illusions are always connected, as is truth. Each is united, a complete thought system, but totally disconnected to each other. And to perceive this is to recognize where separation is and where it must be healed. The result of an idea is never separate from its source. The idea of separation produced the body and remains connected to it, making it sick because of the mind's identification with it. You think you are protecting the body by hiding this connection, for this concealment seems to keep your identification safe from the attack of truth. If you but understood how much this strange concealment has hurt your mind and how confused your own identification has become because of it, you do not see how great the devastation wrought by your faithlessness. For faithlessness is an attack that seems to be justified by its results. For by withholding faith, you see what is unworthy of it and cannot look beyond the barrier to what is joined with you.
So there's a lot there. Just want to point out what is this strange concealment they're talking about. It's the idea that we read about in a moment, the inevitable compromise is the belief that the body must be healed and not the mind. So there's a shift in the ego's confusion to prioritizing body states over the healing of the mind. And then it goes on to say that the separation that is inevitable by bodies, because bodies cannot join, it goes on to assert since bodies cannot join, then neither can minds. It's a false teaching. It's the idea, here's the darker part of it. It says that when your body ends, the body is perishable. When it ends, then the mind will end as well. That's the outcome, is that with the body, so goes the mind, and therefore you as a self-conscious being will no longer exist because the body has perished. So it's a faulty philosophy. It's a misidentification of believing in body-centered identity rather than in your mind-centered identity. And it's concealed from people. The reason why millions upon millions of people are confused by this and believe in it is because this is a teaching that is concealed and has hurt your mind and confused your own identification. And so faith, what's the role of faith in this? Faith in the belief that your mind comes from God and is intent, we're talking about your higher mind, of course, and that is forever. You are forever a part of the mind of God. That belief requires your faith and it requires your trust. And once you have faith and trust in that, then you can let go of opposing beliefs. And as we read just a few paragraphs ago, when you let go of your ego demands, that's when the vision of the Holy Spirit can come rushing in and bring about healing. So this confusion, all sickness comes about as a result of confusing these mind-body relationships. And by the way, it's taught in many traditions. Since it's all confusion, it's taught in almost every, not saying every, almost every thought system out there suffers in one degree or another from this confusion. Felicia?
Yeah, I remember when I first started studying the course, I was looking at it as intellectual, that I needed to learn it with my brain. And it took me a while to separate the thought, my thought system of the brain is my mind. And I mean, was I ever wrong there? And once I realized that my mind is not inside this body, really, my mind is still with God, you know, and I really like that paragraph that where the separation is. And that is our belief that we have separated from God. That's why we're here. And that's really the only forgiveness that we need to do is we need to forgive ourselves of that we separated. You know, because that is what produced the body. But I just wanted to mainly share that I looked at the course as intellectually and I got nowhere. You know, a struggle. But once I let go and let God, then, you know, it started coming to me. So, yeah, thanks.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Felicia.
I'm chatty today for some reason.
Oh, not at all, because you're sharing from the heart and soul. So I don't want you to hold back.
Yeah, thanks.
Sandra?
Yeah, and for me, the lack of separation looks like unconditional love, which does, you know, it doesn't judge anything. It's all inclusive. I'm complete.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Susie?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Felicia was saying. You're not chatty, Felicia. I love hearing your voice. Was that for me, it wasn't even so much that it was intellectual. I had no idea I was so identified with the body and my story and all that level confusion. And once I started to like understand that, and you know oh, that was when things started like for me, like, oh my God. You know, so again, it was the experience and the studying of all the lessons that helped me understand, if I practiced the lessons, I would get some experiences, and then I would really learn to have faith and trust. And that's what I was trying to say before, But yeah, in the beginning, wow, I didn't understand so much of the mind body distinctions.
Yeah, it's really brought out. The principles are laid down in the first two chapters of the text. And maybe it's at which many people, I understand, are completely baffled at that point. And so they don't absorb that as fundamental, foundational, and they move on without an understanding of that level of confusion. It's one of the reasons why I overemphasize it here, is so that you won't miss it. Let's go on.
To have faith is to heal. It is the sign that you have accepted the atonement for yourself and would therefore share it. By faith, you offer the gift of freedom from the past, which you received. You do not use anything your brother has done before to condemn him now. You freely choose to overlook his errors, looking past all barriers between yourself and him and seeing them as one. And in that one, you see your faith is fully justified. There is no justification for faithlessness, but faith is always justified. Faith is the opposite of fear, as much a part of love as fear is of attack. Faith is the acknowledgement of union. It is the gracious acknowledgement of everyone as a son of your most loving Father, loved by him like you, and therefore loved by you as yourself. It is his love that joins you and your brother, and for his love, you would keep no one separate from yours. Each one appears just as he is perceived in the holy instant, united in your purpose to be released from guilt. You see the Christ in him, and he is healed because you look on what makes faith forever justified in everyone.
Mm-hmm. So I want to underscore this idea. The basis here is that we have accepted the atonement for ourselves, have forgiven ourselves, and now have something to offer others. And so faith is a sign you've accepted the atonement and can offer the gift of freedom from the past, which you have received, to someone else. And this goes back to that statement Noel had earlier about how we regard the other person. There's no demands of our ego. We don't use anything our brother has done before in the past to condemn him now, because we've freed ourselves from the past. Let me restate that. We're no longer bound to our past, so we do not bind others to their past. We choose to overlook their errors, not saying they're perfect, looking past the barriers and seeing them as one. This is where the vision of the Holy Spirit comes in, because you're not necessarily have years and years of seeing others as one, but the Holy Spirit does. If we make room for her vision to come in, it's natural that it be extended. And so this is the impact that having faith in healing will do. It begins, as we said, with accepting atonement for yourself, and then from there it can be extended outward. Noel?
Building on that, for me, is trusting the Holy Spirit in him, my brother, and trusting his higher self to guide him as well. That means I'm letting go of my ego perceptions about what I think he should do or be or believe.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. I need to go on, so we pick up time a little bit here. We'll take a comment in a moment.
Faith is the gift of God through whom God has given you. Wait a minute. Faith is the gift of God through him whom God has given you. Faithlessness looks upon the Son of God and judges him unworthy of forgiveness. But through the eyes of faith, the Son of God is seen already forgiven, free of all the guilt he laid upon himself. Faith sees him only now, because it looks not to the past to judge him, but would see in him only what it would see in you. It sees not through the body's eyes, nor looks to bodies for its justification. It is the messenger of the new perception, sent forth to gather witnesses unto its coming, and to return their messages to you.
So many people say, you know, I really don't have the faith for this. And which comes back to, where does faith come from? And I wanted to ask David if he would help us with this first sentence here and understand what it's saying.
You're asking me to tell you what it's saying?
I'm trying.
Okay. Faith is the gift of God through him whom God has given you. And I think the him is the Holy Spirit whom God has given you.
Yeah.
If that's what you're asking me.
Yes. Yes. So where does faith come from?
It comes from God through the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And it's through your brother as well.
Yes. Yes. He's a channel for the Holy Spirit as well. And it's a gift. It's not like we've all got this measure of self-possessed faith. I want to make a distinction between a false notion of my faith. And I'm not talking about my belief systems. I'm really talking about where I choose to put my trust. And it would seem to you and I that each one of us has our own portion of faith that is yours, different than mine. And as long as I believe that, I then look at myself and say, I'm inadequate. I don't have enough faith. I didn't get a full measure. That's my ego critic, right? I'm lacking in an abundance of faith. I got some, but not as much as I need, for instance, for this course. What we're told here is no, you don't realize this is a gift that the Holy Spirit has in abundance. Yes, from God through the Holy Spirit to us and through our brothers, and it's redistributed. But it's not a self-possessed thing. It's a gift from heaven, and you utilize that faith for yourself and in experiences, but you are not the source of that faith. You are not the limiter of that faith. And so you can trust that there is always enough faith for the situation you find yourself in. What's really required is that you open yourself to receive the gift. And this frees you up to believe in possibilities that you would not believe in if you thought that your faith was inadequate to the moment. The gift is coming from the Holy Spirit. She has an abundance of it to give. David, you had a comment?
I do. And I'm inspired to share this because Susie would always tell me that, you should share this with more people. I had problems with faithlessness, certainly. And one of the prayers that I was given that has helped me so much, and I've shared it with others because I think it's helpful, is just the prayer of, I believe, I believe, I believe, help thou my disbelief. Because my ego will stand in the way of my receiving the gift of faith. And I have to ask for my disbelief to be removed. I hope that's helpful to anybody, but it sure helped me.
Yeah, no, it really is. I hear you, brother. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Sandra?
I love this reading. I love what you just said, David, too, because it's a choice. We live in a free will zone. This is the power of decision. And I would also say that in order to have faith, there's got to be a little bit of fear in there. Otherwise, there wouldn't even be a word called faith and trust. Because within that word is a choice. I'm complete.
Okay. Turns out there's moralness in the next paragraph.
Faith is as easily exchanged for knowledge as is the real world. For faith arises from the Holy Spirit's perception and is the sign you share it with him. Faith is a gift you offer to the Son of God through him and wholly acceptable to his Father as to him, and therefore offered you. Your holy relationship with its new purpose offers you faith to give unto your brother. Your faithlessness has driven you and him apart, and so you do not recognize salvation in him. Yet faith unites you in the holiness you see, not through the body's eyes, but in the sight of him who joined you, and in him you are united.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little moment ago, we were talking about where's faith come from? It comes from God through the Holy Spirit, and then to you and to your brothers, and your brothers to you. Well, that's what it's interesting. It always is in the next paragraph, right? Which says that your faith it's given to you to give to your brothers, for your brothers to give to you. Wholly acceptable there. It's off. So where does it come from? It comes through people as well. But yes, the Holy Spirit is this is kind of the behind the curtains message of A Course in Miracles. The Holy Spirit cannot be seen with the eyes of the body or heard with human ears. So it falls upon those who are faithful to accept the Holy Spirit's vision as their own and to hear the guidance of the Holy Spirit as their own, and then share that with others. And so now you have the gifts of the Holy Spirit are passing through you to a brother. That's how healing occurs. That's what miracles are. It's the passing of a gift that started from God, was brought to time and space through the Holy Spirit, and then through your willingness to accept that guidance for yourself is then passed on to others. It's really a giving and receiving plan to have all give all to have all give all to all. Heather? Heather, you're muted. See if I can help you here. Not working. All right, we're not hearing you if you're trying to talk. All right, so come back when you get that taken care of. Okay, so faith is necessary for healing. What about grace?
Grace is not given to a body, but to a mind. And the mind that receives it looks instantly beyond the body and sees the holy place where it was healed. There is the altar where the grace was given, in which it stands. Do you then offer grace and blessing to your brother, for you stand at the same altar where grace was laid for both of you? And be you healed by grace together, that you may heal through faith. In the holy instant, you and your brother stand before the altar God has raised unto himself and both of you. Lay faithlessness aside and come to it together. There will you see the miracle of your relationship as it was made again through faith. And there it is that you will realize that there is nothing faith cannot forgive. No error interferes with its calm sight, which brings the miracle of healing with equal ease to all of them. For what the messengers of love are sent to do, they do, returning the glad tidings that it was done to you and your brother, who stand together before the altar from which they were sent forth.
Well, this is pretty amazing here. This is what I really want to help people to find this for themselves. We're talking about an experience with spirit. We're talking about grace. And if it was ever unclear, where does grace come from? It's very clear right here. Grace is found at the altar. Next question for somebody would be, well, what is the altar? It's a metaphor. It's not a physical thing. It's an interior place within you where that which you hold most dear in your heart, your treasure, your dedication, is found. And in confusion, we can place idols on our altar. So the altar is not necessarily something that we bring our highest self to. For instance, if a person is obsessed with wealth and finances above all else, that's their dedication. As much money as possible, and I'm not picking just on money, just using it as an example, then that's what they'll bring to their altar. They'll make an idol out of it and dedicate themselves to that. That'll become their treasure. And so the Course will help us to recognize what really matters. And what really matters is that you align your purpose, your sense of will, with the Holy Spirit's guidance. And when we do that, our idols that we've made in this world are seen as not so important as we may have one day thought. And so instead of bringing on false idols to the altar, instead we bring our dedication to the plan of atonement to the altar. So in what we're reading about here is that when we come in a healed state Now we're moving forward. Now we've dedicated ourselves to the plan of atonement. We bring our healed state to the altar, and that's where we find grace. And David, isn't it interesting? In the holy instant, you and your brother stand before the altar. So this is not an isolated experience to which no one else is welcome. This is a place of holy encounters. Again, it's an interior state of devotion, pure, it's intended to be pure, and devotion to the highest will of creation, the will of God, which is also your will. And in a holy instant, where you let go of all those ego agendas, that's what comes rushing in, is an awareness of union with the will of God and with your brother. And so it is, how can we say, it's a transcendent encounter with your true self, and everyone is welcome to share in it with you. No one is excluded. So that's just some of the ideas here. There's a lot more can be said, but we don't have the rest of the day to talk about it. Would anybody else like to comment on anything that is here? So one more comment is, what is grace? What is grace? All right, we just found out it comes from the altar, and it must be good, a good thing. But what is it? Well, within A Course of Miracles, and I'm not, grace has been talked about in many traditions for a long time, but I want to limit this to the way it's refers to in the Course of Miracles. Grace is a state, an experience of consciousness, which is illuminated by spiritual light. It is not in a fog, in a delusion, but it's illuminated. It's a higher estate, high up on the ladder. The prerequisites for grace are total forgiveness. So you can't carry resentments and judgments and hatred with you along and experience grace, because it's those things are used as weapons against truth. So grace is this higher estate, and I'm sure it says as much here about offering grace. And grace is the state where miracles occur all the time. Great grace is a free flow. It's a state of where the prior barriers, the obstacles to the awareness of love's presence, have been largely, if not almost entirely, relinquished, disintegrated from the ego. And now there's a flow, because there's no obstacles, of blessing and light from within to everyone that you encounter. Felicia?
So, is grace something we already have in our mind? Or is it is? Okay, that's my question.
Yeah, we would say it's already within us, but there are obstacles. And when all the obstacles are removed, then the light of grace shines freely. And therefore, important part of that, Felicia, is everyone else has the grace within themselves, even if it's obstacles in the way. So you can believe in the light of grace within them even before they believe in it themselves.
Okay. Okay. I just didn't know if it was something that our mind had to come to a certain state before we before we actually received it.
Yeah.
It's already there.
Right. All the gifts have already been given, Felicia.
Okay.
No one held back on the gifts, but they're obscured by these demands that the ego illusions it's insisting on.
Right. I understand that. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Susie?
You know, I think for me to experience grace is it goes back to having faith that I believe that I am indeed a child of God.
Mhm.
And, that's that was a tall order and still something that, I work on. But yeah, I have a lot of faith in the Holy Spirit and her ability to heal. I really do. Experiential. I'm still working on the true belief, core belief that I am a child of God and highly favored. So that's it for me.
Yeah. It is quite a journey inward, isn't it? It's an amazing journey inward. It doesn't happen in a flash for most of us. It's a very gradual letting go of all that would contradict the gifts that are within us. Sandra?
I'm just wondering about, and please forgive me if this sounds like I'm correcting, because I just have a question about total forgiveness. Is there such a thing? Because forgiveness is a verb, so it's ongoing. So there may always, I mean, I can't think that that I've totally forgiven, because something's going to come up in the moment that gives me another opportunity to forgive. So is there such a thing? And if I totally forgive, then don't I become the Holy Spirit?
Yes.
Okay. All right, got it. Okay.
Yes. Well, I'm not saying that we can point to all these individuals that are walking around in total forgiveness, but the Course does talk about it. It also talks about perfect perception, which would be the equivalent of that. It also talks about total willingness. So think of it more, Sandra, in that we're no longer divided in our giving some power to judgment and some power and the rest power to forgiveness. Total forgiveness is all our mind is used full time for forgiving and not part time for judging. So that would be total forgiveness. And yes, then events occur that require forgiveness, but we're no longer using our mind as a weapon to also judge. So total willingness, total forgiveness, perfect perception is comes back to that word, dedication. Dedication to only one agenda, not to two opposite agendas.
And power of decision.
Oh yeah.
We're in free will. We're in a free will zone. So we have to keep deciding to forgive. I have to keep deciding to forgive rather than to hold on to my judgment. So it's an ongoing thing.
Yes, it is indeed. All right, we need to wrap up.
As faithlessness will keep your little kingdoms barren and separate, so will faith help the Holy Spirit prepare the ground for the most holy garden that he would make of it. For faith brings peace, and so it calls on truth to enter and make lovely what has already been prepared for loveliness. Truth follows faith and peace, completing the process of making lovely that they begin. For faith is still a learning goal, no longer needed when the lesson has been learned, yet truth will stay forever. Let then your dedication be to the eternal, and learn how not to interfere with it and make it slave to time. For what you think you do to the eternal, you do to you. Whom God created as his son is slave to nothing, being Lord of all, along with his creator. You can enslave a body, but an idea is free, incapable of being kept in prison or limited in any way except by the mind that thought it. For it remains joined to its source, which is its jailer or its liberator, according to which it chooses as its purpose for itself.
So I think because we're wrapping up here, it's ending on a note of dedication to the eternal. Your faith and your healing in the ego state, we split our time between functioning part-time for faith and healing. And as David testified and shared so heartily, but then there's this opposite of faithlessness that takes up some energy and time and gets in the way. And so it's a journey. You don't have to arrive at the final step tomorrow. So be gentle on yourself, but know that we're being called. Most important part is that you take one step forward with each day. It's not important how you judge yourself or where you are. It is important the direction you are moving is towards forgiveness and letting go. Ultimately, that will carry us to total forgiveness. David?
Thank you. My sister is here listening to this class from Wisconsin. And this last paragraph is important to me because I'm going to reflect back on our experience at Walnut Hills High School, which we loved. We went to the same high school. And in it, I remember from Walnut Hills a Nathaniel Hawthorne quote, which is, "What jailer is so inexorable as oneself?" And that applies so much to me in this last paragraph. It just jumped out at me. It says, which is its jailer or its liberator, according to which it chooses as its purpose for itself. And there it is. What jailer is so inexorable as oneself, but has the key? We all have the key to open the jail cell, to open our ancient prison, to let us be free. We just have to use it and have the Holy Spirit help us unlock the lock, and it's all there. So I wanted to share that.
On a finer note than that, we could not find. So thank you. That's really beautiful. Shades of Nathaniel Hawthorne there, for sure. Profound, very poetic as well. So thank you all. That was an introduction to chapter 19. Much more to come as we go. Really delighted that we could share this experience today together. Thank you, David, for reading. Thank you all for your sharing, and look forward to connecting again with you soon. Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Love you all.
Namaste, everyone.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Jonaca.
Hi, everybody.
Peace and love all.
Peace and love.